No, nothing. Okay, I see it coming. No, she's doing it. Okay. Thank you very, very much. As you know, I used to work at Checkpoint. I was there for 8 years. So I'll always have a warm spot in my heart for Checkpoint and people who work at Checkpoint. Very brave souls. No, I'm joking. I really, really love Checkpoint. Okay, jokes aside. Our next speaker is another very, very good friend of mine, Moshe Ferber. Moshe is a part of the Israeli cybersecurity community. There are a lot of people in this audience that are a part of this community and know Moshe. He is one of the leading world experts in cloud security, and he's actually the founder of, right, the founder? What to say? Of the Cloud Alliance? No, he's not the founder of the Cloud Alliance, but he could be. He could be. And one day, with your help, Moshe will be the founder. Yeah, right?
Thank you.
No, I want to stay on stage some more. And with that, I give you Moshe Ferber.
Okay, thank you, Matan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
You need to move it up a bit.
Okay, is it better now? Okay, thank you. Okay. So after you realize I'm not a founder of the Cloud Security Alliance, then who am I? My name is Moshe Ferber. I've been into the security industry for the last 20 years. In the last 6 years, I've been involved in cloud computing because I was a founder of other stuff that were placed on top of a cloud. And when I was looking for a methodology for something that, how can I explain my customers that they can trust me, right? Trust is a keyword in cloud computing. So when I try to figure out how I can make my customer trust me and take their workloads, take their data, their precious data, and put it on my infrastructure. It's not my infrastructure, yeah? I was installed on top of a public cloud provider, so I had to balance between all of those various threats. This is where I came across the Cloud Security Alliance, as Matan mentioned, and Cloud Security Alliance gave me a methodology. And in the last couple of years, what I've been doing is traveling around the world, talking to different companies, different audiences about cloud computing, and this is where I end up here. So from that, I'm going to move on, and we're going to talk about the state of cloud security today. And I know cloud and security doesn't always go hand in hand. That's always with new technologies. We've seen that ever since we had emails. I've seen CISOs saying that they will not put in email software. I saw security officers saying they will not use TCP/IP. This is your advantage for having 20 years of experience. You see people saying a lot of things, and then you see how the worlds evolve. And today, I think the biggest problem for CISOs is understanding the cloud. Not all of them understand what the word is. And this word is complicated because the cloud is not just a one word. It is basically very different in nature. The word cloud describes services that are very different in nature. They behave differently from security perspective. I mean, you cannot really compare the amount of responsibility and the amount of challenge you have when you build something on top of Amazon, where you control the firewall, you control the configuration of the virtual machines, and you cannot compare it to the security setting of using a software as a service application. So we have different services that behave differently from security perspective, and the chief security officers need to understand that. And they also have different deployment models. So my first message to you guys, if you don't understand the differences between the different cloud services like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, take a couple of minutes and learn them. I mapped the different services, the famous services, of course there are tons more of services, into the various deployments and various service levels. What you see on the bottom line is the various deployment models, and what you see on the left side is the various service levels models. All of them demonstrate very different security behavior. So take your time and understand that, because this will bring you to the next level, which is the shared responsibility model. This is like the A, B, and C's of cloud computing, the shared responsibility model. It defines what you are responsible for and what is the provider responsible for. And it's very different when you talk about different service levels. Now, those of you who attended my more advanced lectures, they will know that once I show this and I said, you have to master this, this is the ABC of cloud security, I also, in the same sentence, I say, but this is changing. This will not last because the borders are fading. And today, you cannot really distinguish between those services accurately. You go for Salesforce, that's software as a service. You want to develop on top of Salesforce, you need to go into force.com, which is platform as a service. The change is something that does almost unnoticed. You go for Microsoft Office 365, which is software as a service. But you want to add an identity layer, connected to your local Active Directory. Boom. You need Active Directory, Azure Active Directory services, which is platform as a service. So again, the borders are fading. In the next couple of years, we will not use this because the borders are fading between the services. But currently today, this is the best methodology we have for understanding the cloud. And for now, I want to take a quick look, see what is improving and what is deteriorating, what is not improving in the area of cloud computing, so you can know where to put your focus on. The first thing we are improving in the area of transparency. Providers are getting more transparent. If you look at least the top 3 or 4 providers, they tell you, this is my security policy. This is how I protect your data. They have tons of documents, of papers, of audit, penetration test. They give you to look at their penetration test and audit if you sign an NDA or customer agreement. So they become more transparent. You can understand and evaluate better how they do security. And what you find out of this phase is that not all cloud providers are created equal. Some of them are good. Some of them are in the business for at least a couple of years. Some of them have huge budgets, and they can do good security. They are mature. Okay? Some of them are not so mature. Okay? I'll not use the word bad, but they're not so mature. So there's a big diversity in the market, and this is a challenge for us. Transparency is a way to distinguish which providers are more mature. And there's a big improvement with standards and compliance. We see more and more providers supporting more standards, more regulation, more laws. So it can mitigate your compliance efforts. I know that compliance doesn't equal security. We are at this point of the industry that we can say that compliance can sometimes hurt security because it focuses you maybe on different places. But still, it's the best way we have today to, again, to understand what is the provider doing and what kind of security measure he will be using. A key security, let's say, feature or a key security enabler is the automation, specifically in infrastructure and platform as a service and platform as a service environments. You can do amazing things with automation, and I think this is the automation today, I mean, in the next couple of years, is the things that will make the difference. Okay? We talk a lot about the fact that we don't do patches fast enough, we don't do penetration tests fast enough, we don't do deployments fast enough, right? You know, the fact that you install a server, you wait for the security guy to at least a couple of weeks until you come in, do the patches, do the hardening, install the security tools. This will not last in cloud environments. In cloud environments, we could have environments that are up and running for 3 hours, 4 hours. You must have automation to make sure that those servers are launching and configured properly so they can work the 4 hours. Remember, in cloud models, especially infrastructure as a service, every CPU time, every CPU minute costs money. You cannot wait for your security consultant to come over and do the hardening and patching. You must have security automation. And providers are getting better. I see beautiful environments today. I can see production environments that every night each server is rebooting, is deleting itself and installing itself from scratch. So even someone managed to put in a Trojan horse, the server is dead, and the next day it's a new server installed from scratch. There are beautiful automation features there. You need to master this art. This is not simple. This is complicated stuff, but they sometimes can do the big difference in today's environment. Today's environment is time to market, right? We see production cycles, we see sprints of software delivery, going down from once every couple of months to 130 production changes a day. Some of the companies here can do 130 production changes a day. You cannot do this without automation. This is the software industry today. The lifespan of an application is very short. So automation is a major key. And providers are getting better in this, at least the mature ones. We're having better monitoring option. A couple of years ago, when I started with the cloud, it was obvious that when you move to cloud, doesn't matter IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, you lose some kind of visibility. You lose you don't have networking logs, you don't have system logs, you don't have Windows log, Linux logs. You lose visibility, network traffic logs. Providers are compensating for that. It's true that you cannot always get infrastructure logs, but they're getting better in providing us more application-level logs. And if you utilize them correctly, you can get better results when you understand what your people are doing in the infrastructure level, at the application level. So you can give up on the infrastructure log and rely more on application security logs, and providers are getting better. They're giving you more transparency. Those of you who've been in the information security for the last couple of years, they know how hard it is. For instance, let's say, track every movement of your system administrator in the databases, in the Active Directory, in the Unix administration, right? It's very hard to monitor them. But in IaaS environments today, with the mature provider, I can see exactly what my IT teams are doing. So they are really improving in this aspect. We have the downside as well. The more the technology is getting less complicated, it's getting more simple. I can launch servers today. I can launch 100 servers from my iPad with Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, right? But as a result, the legal atmosphere, the legal environment is getting much more complicated. If you're following, United States and the EU are not talking anymore about data transfer, right? They're negotiating an agreement. Somebody managed to say that the entire agreement between the EU and the United States about transferring data, the Safe Harbor Agreement, is not valid. So today you cannot move your PII data from the EU to the United States. We are not even aware of that, and some of us at least, and we're in the security industry. So the legal environment is really getting complicated, and we are still looking for answers. And we know that the legal environment is a couple of years behind after the technical. But now we feel it, okay? You cannot move your data. You need to sign more contracts. You need to have more lawyers handling your client contracts because they're not simplified. They're starting to be really complicated. So legal complexity rises, and today security officers need to work more with the legal department to verify that the contracts are, at least to evaluate the risk in the contracts. Cloud provider, again, can give you great configuration options. They have tons of things you can do with monitoring, alerting, blocking, different access controls. They have tons of them. But the security is usually open by default. You need to do a lot of work to close it down. Firewall rules are open by default. Administrative users have full permissions, so you need to work down and close them, remove extra permissions, close down the firewall rules, okay? In the last couple of years, we see, for instance, Microsoft moving from open by default to security. I'm talking about the local operating system. From open by default to more secure operating systems in our local, Windows 2000, Windows 2003, Windows 7 has started to improve. They are more secure by default. But in the cloud, this trend has not arrived yet. The cloud sales pitch is time to market, right? Sign into Amazon, sign into Google, you can spin up 100 servers in 5 minutes. They're time to market. They don't want to slow you down by forcing you to do more security configuration. So they're really open by default, and you need to work hard, gain the right expertise to close those services. And those services are complicated. If we're talking about Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, they got tons of configuration items you need to understand and work with. So you need to gain the expertise in order to close those services down. And it's not a one-page checklist. It's a long list. As cloud matures, providers are getting to be more attractive, right? More and more of the human data is focusing into Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM, the big fours. They're also buying more companies, so they're adding more servers to the data centers, so more and more of the human knowledge is installed in less and less data centers. Okay? Consolidating. And the result of that is those data centers are the Fort Knox of the future. They need to understand that they cannot continue to work as software companies. They are more in charge of the human knowledge and the human wealth. Okay? So those providers, some of them understand that. The more mature understand that, they understand that a big piece of the human knowledge is installed on their servers, and they are getting better in protecting their physical environments. But they are still exposed to government warrants, right? Every time we move our data to the cloud, we move it from our jurisdiction to maybe to a different jurisdiction, and this puts our data under a different legal system. And if you're following what's happening in the world today, you see how Microsoft and the government of Ireland and some other companies are fighting the NSA and the FBI in court in order to make sure that they don't break the obligations that Microsoft have to other countries, okay? Because some of the requests from the NSA and from the FBI can break the Microsoft adherence to other countries' laws. And this causes us to understand that in the next couple of years, what happens in the legal market will really influence the way how we understand the government access to cloud computing. Now, this is a complicated topic, so I must move on, but we can talk tons about it because it's really interesting. The last thing, cloud provider, on the one hand, they're saying we are adding you more features that you can leave us easily. You have more export options, backup options, take the data out of your cloud. But on the other hand, they're getting better in providing us more services to lock us in. Okay? What is the lock-in threats? You're stuck with a cloud provider, unable to take your data without additional expenses or a downtime. And cloud provider needs to improve in the way that they let us finish our relationship and move on. Now, those are basically the things that are getting better or getting worse with cloud computing that we need to pay attention. Now, cloud computing, the attitude to cloud computing is very changing based on your market sector, right? I tried to map. From one side, we have the cloud avoiders, which are usually the military, homeland industries. Those guys will not use public cloud for the main businesses, maybe some very niche applications. We have the cloud curious, the guys that are doing their first projects in the cloud. Usually, those guys coming from the regulated sectors, banks, health industries, various financial services, the government. They're regulated industries, so they're living in some kind of regulation, either some kind of regulation fog, because not all the regulation are written, not all regulation are articulated correctly, not all the countries have regulation for all sectors, so they live in some kind of void and they need to operate inside those void, and they are doing their actions really carefully. Okay, this is where most banks are. This is where some of the health industry, some guys in the pharmaceutical and the health industry. We have the cloud adopters. This is the industry, usually utility, retail. It's not a big sector in Israel, right? We don't have a lot of industry. We don't have a lot of utilities. But those utilities we have are usually critical infrastructure, which place them here. But in the world, these are the big adopters of cloud computing. And of course, we have the guys that are cloud focused, which is the SMBs, the high-tech sectors, the telecom sectors. All of them are, today they're into a policy of cloud first, okay? We have a new application. We are upgrading something. Let's first check the option of the cloud. Then if it's not working, if it's not secured enough, if we don't have a good offering, we'll check it in-house. Couple of hints or tips for each market sector. The cloud avoiders, those guys are usually building private clouds. At least the big banks, the big armies, the big homeland securities companies, they build the private cloud. Remember, private clouds still have the same attack vectors. I mean, it's usually managed by someone else. It still uses the same software with the virtualization and automation and the API keys and everything that we know that there are attack vectors from the public cloud. So we still have the same attack vectors. You still need to protect from those vectors. Nothing has changed. Those of you who are the sector of the cloud curious, usually banks, health industries, build your cloud strategy. Don't let your customer, don't let your IT department work in a void, work where in the atmosphere where it's not clear if you can move to the cloud or not. Even if your cloud policy says, don't move to the cloud, well, that's okay. At least they know what to do. At least they're breaking something. If they're moving to the cloud, you can say to them, okay, you did something wrong. But if you don't do that, if you don't build your cloud strategy, you end up like this, with tons of cloud services that you don't have an ability to follow. So build your cloud strategy. You have a couple of examples in the market. There are various consultants that can do this. It's an easy work, at least to get a first draft, something that the organization can sit down and talk about it later on. If we're talking about the cloud adopters, the guys that are already running in the cloud, they are now in a position where they need to evaluate their providers more carefully. Usually when we talk about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, we talk about, in IaaS and PaaS, we talk about a decision that the organization is doing once. Okay? It's like choosing between Linux and Windows or Microsoft SQL versus Oracle. You decide you go with Azure or Microsoft. You don't, or Amazon or Google or IBM. Sorry if I'm offending anyone that I'm not mentioning. But you do this decision once. But when you talk about software as a service, you can have tons of providers for HR, for employee evaluations, for ERP, for finance, for CRM, for emails. Each time you need to evaluate the provider, understand what is the security measures is doing, understand if he's mature enough for your workloads. Will he add more risk? How can you how can you mitigate those risks? Basically, the Cloud Security Alliance have a couple of tools that can help you do that. Take a look at the CCM and the CAIQ. Those are basically becoming the standard for evaluating cloud providers. Those are basically the checklist to use with your cloud providers. What else can we say about cloud adopters? Cloud adopters are usually now looking for the next application to move to the cloud. Let's try to give them a couple of hints. In the cloud, it's easier to cope with application that you need to protect them from confidentiality and integrity risk. Okay, this is a rule of thumb. I can find examples that are not really matching those rules, but as a general guideline, availability, integrity is better off in the cloud. Confidentiality, there are some issues with that, regulation, cross-border data transfers, things you need to look up for. But availability, integrity, take your applications. I know that security officers can only focus on like 20% of his application, like focus heavily. The other 80% is like, okay, we'd get to them in a certain point. Look at those 80%. Maybe there are some applications that are better off outsourced by someone, and you are monitoring those services. For the telecom industry is considered to be cloud adopters. They're now searching the way how to become cloud providers, right? This is their challenge now. Nobody is interested only in internet today. They're also interested in internet with added values like email services, infrastructure services, having new services, either infrastructure or software as a service. This is usually where the telecom industry is going. So first of all, you need to boost up your security operations. This is your major challenge. Companies that don't run a lot of servers, like software companies, telecom companies, sometimes don't have enough operational security. This is where they fail. They're not used to that. In each bank, you have like 5,000 servers. They know how to do operational security. For software companies and some of the telecom companies, this is really new. So this is the biggest challenge. For the cloud-focused, the guys that are in the cloud, cloud-first attitude, for them, the challenge has shifted. They now have to manage multiple cloud applications. This is a different challenge. Your identity infrastructure is usually inside. Your monitoring infrastructure is usually inside. How can you integrate this to Okay, I can understand integrating it to one cloud service, to two cloud services. Integrated into 5, 6, 7, 80 cloud services. Some of the major enterprises here in Israel, which is not the best, are running over 150 cloud applications. How can you integrate your current identity infrastructure, your current monitor infrastructure, current backup infrastructure to those services? Because you need to integrate it. The first thing you understand after you past your third SaaS service is that you need one central layer of administration to manage it. And take a look at the new area that is developing, mostly here in Israel, of cloud access security brokers. This is how Gartner named this niche of providers that are putting more added value on top of the cloud services. A lot of companies from Israel, some of them are US-based, but they have interesting features that can help you with multiple cloud management. For the startups, it's a new game, right? For them, the idea is to build their services on the go and build your security integrated into that. And this is another talk that we cannot really match today because Matan is saying that the time is over. Just to wrap things up, don't let security hold you down. Move to the cloud with automated security so it not hold you down. Use the right tools to evaluate your providers. Make sure that you're using the tools that are adopted to the cloud. Sometimes your ordinary tools will not work well in cloud environments. Sometimes the cheap open source tools will work best on the Linux deployments that you have in your IaaS, things you fail to do on your local infrastructure. And the last thing, make sure you have responsible cloud adoption. Not secure cloud adoption, responsible cloud adoption. Okay, it's a very different thing. It makes it, if you do it correctly, it means the same thing. Okay, but you need to adjust your risk assessment according to that. Thank you very much, guys.